There is something about Kolkata Knight Riders which really puzzles fans back home, especially in the City of Joy. There was no joy today considering it was yet another defeat at the Wankhede Stadium for the Knight Riders. We'll dissect it with Mark Butcher because we have to right now. Right guys, you're watching Criclytics Man versus Machine, and RR have picked up 2 precious points, and who knows, in the grander scheme of things, this match will probably be pivotal for their playoff dreams. Mark, what do you make of KKR? Because it's shambolic. They didn't have the luck. They didn't have, of course, anything going away. But more importantly, the word intent was missing from their dictionary.
It certainly was. One thing it proves, I think, is that, a lot of people, there's a lot of nonsense talked about sort of batting and big bats, small grounds, everything is in the batsman's favour. Every ball goes for 6, doesn't matter whether it comes out the middle or not. Well, palpably all that stuff's nonsense, because confidence is still a huge factor when it comes to batting and batsmanship. And at the moment, KKR seem to be sort of weighed down by the results that have gone against them in recent past. And, there are guys out there who have career strike rates in the 130s, 140s who seem afraid to play a shot. The only people who've played with any sort of freedom in the last couple of games have been Dinesh Karthik, who's looked very good. Perhaps it might be time to give him a bit more responsibility up the top of the order. And, of course, Andre Russell, who only knows one way. And it's extraordinary, really, that a team with that much talent in it can play so far below that talent.
Absolutely, and you talk about Rajasthan Royals, look at them. It was chalk and cheese what they offered against RCB and this lot today, because against RCB they couldn't get any wicket. Today they got 9, they stifled them to 133. Do you think the game was won in the first half itself, considering more respect for your man Mustafizur came to the party for 1 for 22 as well? Do you think they really won the game in the first innings?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, chasing 133 is nothing, is it, at Mumbai? And even, a batting lineup like Rajasthan, who've had similar problems to KKR, in truth, in terms of their confidence and the way they've gone about things, could measure the innings to an extent where they knew they didn't need much more than a run of ball from the start. Hence, Sanju Samson was able to sort of give himself that little bit of time that we've talked about and play a captain's innings to see his team through. But yeah, the bowlers were good. Again, the surface wasn't great. The pitches are getting tired, as you would expect, having to be reused as often as they have been. Definitely time for a move from Chennai and the Wankhede Stadium. And, perhaps then we might start to see some scores going upwards rather than plummeting downwards once those moves are made. But, the bowlers and the fielding from Rajasthan Royals was very, very sharp. And the absolute opposite has to be said for KKR.
Yeah, and you make some good points there, Butch. We'll come on to your predictions and tell you about that, because the smile gives it away that I am right now sharing with you, considering you have beaten the machine. But don't get too chuckly about it, because I'll tell you the grander scheme of things as well. Just a final word before we get into the predictions, like I said, on Jos Buttler. Now, RR have done the business twice this season, mainly relying on Chris Morris. Buttler hasn't come to the party. So is it actually a good sign for RR that their main star player hasn't signed, but they're still getting the job done?
Yes. There's one caveat. I mean, listen, we're talking about an IPL and professional sport in general, which is being played in a way that, that's never been seen before. Players being cooped up in hotel rooms, bubbles. Nothing is normal at the moment. So regularly you might say, yeah, Buttler being quiet in the first half, as long as that means he's got plenty in the tank and plenty of room to improve in the second, and Rajasthan have got a couple of wins under their belt, no problem. The one factor that you can't know, and nobody will know, is just how tired and mentally fatigued Jos Buttler and the likes of various other players in lots of teams are with living the way that they've been living for the last 12 months on the road. Liam Livingstone has already headed back for home. So we've seen that sort of the effect happening there. The Indian players have been in bubbles since Australia, really. They came straight home to go into a series against England. The England guys have been out there in India from, some of them have been out there. Jos Buttler was out there in Sri Lanka in January. Had a little bit of time back at home. But there are lots of other factors at play here rather than what the fans can see is happening on the field.
Yeah, who would have known that bubble fatigue will become a more commonly used word in cricketing circles, and that's how really COVID has left a mark on this world. And boy, let's not talk about the doom and gloom. Let's get something brighter right now because it's the prediction times, of course. And yep, Mark Butcher, another win for him, a slender 1-0 away win. He had to thank Sanju Samson because that was eventually the man to give him the win. We'll go on to the wicket-keepers, but first the batsmen, because Criclytics and Mark today were way off with their predictions. They called something else, something completely different happened. So we'll go one by one and we'll skim through it quickly. Rahul Tripathi, the top batsman, Butch, 37, nothing really to flatter, but he still looked something better than nothing apart from the rest of the KKR batsmen, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And he was one of the three guys, Rana, Gill, Tripathi, the three sort of Indian players plus Dinesh Karthik into that. You'd say, well, listen, with those guys as Indian players in the batting lineup, then if the overseas players can augment that a little bit, then they're a winning side. Owen Morgan was run out for naught. He again hasn't made any contribution at all. And Tripathi has had, I suppose, a good day. But wow, if you're calling 36 a good day, you're in real trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. I think KKR will look at this and they'll go back to the drawing board and see where to really plug the holes. Because what they're doing right now is playing cricket, but not to the full tilt, not to the 100% that we know KKR could play. Bowlers next, and there were quite a few to choose from because, of course, the bowlers pocketed the most amount of points in terms of the fantasy and whatnot. But the man that stood out for KKR because he got the most wickets as a bowler was Varun Chakravarti. How difficult as a batsman is it to face someone like a mystery spinner? We talk about Rashid Khan, we used to talk about Ajanta Mendes. Varun Chakravarti falls under that same category, Butch.
Yeah, he does. I suppose, they're, particularly with guys who are relatively new on the scene, it takes a little while before people start to read the different trajectories and the different release points, the different releases out of the hand of new mystery spinners. So they're always in with a great shout of making an impact in the early parts of their careers. And of course, the perennial issue batting in T20 in short form cricket is that you haven't got the time to kind of sit there and figure it out. You've got to score off every ball. You've got to go big. And if you haven't read it out of the hand, it makes it doubly difficult.
Yeah, talk about his story, Varun Chakravarti. What a tale to the top that's been. But that's a chat for another day. Let's move on to, of course, the all-rounders, because we both put our money on Andre Russell. I say we both because you and me backed him. So did Criclytics. We all had egg on our face. And eventually it was Chris Morris, a man, of course, from South Africa, delivering yet again and showing why they bought him for that price tag.
Yeah, I mean, he's somebody that confounds, isn't he, every year? Every year he gets picked up, or every sort of auction he gets picked up for huge amounts of money. There is 50% of people that say he's the biggest waste of money ever on the IPL, and there's the other 50% that say I would have him every single time if the money was mine to spend. So look, he's somebody that frustrates and delights in equal measure. And it's very difficult to get behind and say, right, it's not like Andre Russell where you think, pretty much you can guarantee the guy is worth putting your money on. Chris Morris blows very hot and cold, but when he's hot, he's hot. And four for spit is a great return. He didn't even have to strap his pads on.
And what kind of sector people are you in that whole debate with Chris Morris? Do you reckon that you have him, or you would probably leave him out?
No, I'd have him. I mean, I got to know him a little bit in my time over there in the IPO. He's a terrific fella. Not that has anything to do with your cricketing ability. And it's always baffled me how South Africa haven't made better use of his all-round talents. And I think he's basically given up, hoping on that score that he's going to have an international career. So the leagues, T20 franchises are the way forward for him. And I think he's worth a punt. I also think he's worth giving a bit more responsibility and batting higher up the order than he does for Rajasthan Royals. I think, particularly with all of these high impact guys, with all of these guys who can strike at 200 plus, even they wouldn't mind the odd sort of 3 or 4 balls to get themselves in. If you're always having to go in there with a strike rate of 15s, your effectiveness, or at least the regularity of your effectiveness, comes down as a result of that. So, I'd be inclined to kind of give him a little bit more to do as an all-rounder rather than sort of an 8-9 jack batsman.
Yeah, because when he was part of the RCB squad, we as fans knew how important he was, considering he was solving our death bowl problems. But now it's for the Royals, of course. We'll move on to the wicket keepers because, like I said, guys, here's where it was won and lost. And I tried to really push Mark in the preview in this one to go for Joss Butler, but he stuck with his guns. He backed Sanju Samson. Dinesh Karthik got the odd 25, like Butch mentioned at top of the show. But Sanju Samson's 37 show him. I mean, just ran away with a clear winner eventually.
Yeah, and that's where I get my away goal, isn't it? I think he's a terrific player, and with all of that talent and the responsibility of captaincy, you have to learn on the job. You have to learn pretty fast, and you also have to lead by example. And he had the perfect chance to do that today. As I said, try and give yourself a bit more time to get in. He had all the time in the world. He only had to go at sixes. So and very importantly, he walked off at the end, having shaken hands with the opposition, picked up a stump for himself, finished the job off, which means he can stand there in the next team meeting and say, hey, I've done it. I've shown you how to do it. This is how we go forward as a team.
Yeah, it certainly bodes well. It bodes well for you, the 1-0 victory, because KKR not winning this game, which meant Criclytics and Mark called it wrong. RR winning, that means it stayed at 1-0 and Mark could celebrate with the stoppage time, pretty much like Sam Allardyce back in the day, like he's doing right now. Mark, in the grandest scheme of things, 14-13, but you'll be back with us shortly, I think in a week's time or something, and then probably you can overtake the robot. But today it was an absolutely shocking performance.
Yeah, shocking from the robot anyway. I mean, fancy having all that data at your fingertips and losing to a mug like me back in South London. I don't know.
You're being modest, but we love you, Butch, and we appreciate your time. And kudos to the turtleneck that you're wearing right now. The weather is such that you guys get that opportunity to dress well in the United Kingdom, unlike India, where I'm just sweating in the studio in Bangalore. But we do it that way in cricket.com. We appreciate your time. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching this, subscribe to the YouTube channel and get locked in, because cricket.com has a lot to offer, including a lot of articles too, which will really fancy your taste buds. That's all we have. Thanks for watching. It's a goodbye from me.